If you want to join in, 020 38 29 1234. Well, another summer and another migrant crisis is hitting mainland Europe. Over the past week alone, there's been two major incidents on the Spanish border. One where 1,000 armed migrants tried to storm and storm a port, and another when a migrant boat landed on a tourist beach near Gibraltar in broad daylight. We've probably all laughed at this. We've seen it on YouTube and on Facebook and on Twitter, but it's really serious as these guys jumped off the boat and hot-footed it, literally and metaphorically, up the beach. Are these all unrelated, or is it part of something bigger? Well, a stupid question. And can this tell us also anything about the Muslim rape gang revelations in Newcastle this week? Well, Associate Director of the Henry Jackson Society and author of the brilliant book, The Strange Death of Europe, Douglas Murray, has written a tremendous piece in The Spectator on all of this, putting the two things together. And I'm delighted to say Douglas joins us now. Hi, Douglas.
Hello, very good to be with you, John.
Very good to be with you. So now it looks as if mainland Spain might be the major port of entry for these illegals after they've already swamped Italy. What on earth is going on?
Well, it's a very good question, because in the last few years, Spain has actually avoided the worst of the migrant crisis. Most of the people who've been coming in illegally into Europe have been coming in through the Italian ports of entry and the Greek ports of entry. The interesting thing is, of course, that since the EU did this massive bribe to the Turkish Sultan Erdogan last year, there has actually been a drying up of the movement into Greece from Turkey. Yeah. So most of the concentration this summer so far has been on Italy, where about 100,000 people have illegally entered the country this year. And Spain has been quite a long way behind, with only under a tenth of that movement. But perhaps this is going to change now. This has been the tendency that as exits and entry points are addressed, the flow moves elsewhere, and that looks like that's happening with Spain.
And who are these people who jumped out of the boat, and where have they come from?
We don't know, and the authorities in Spain don't know. There's been a claim that about 10 of the 30 to 40 people have been found by the authorities. All of them will stay in Spain, all of them will stay in Europe. Going back to the 90s, when there was a flow into Spain from Africa, everyone stayed, and everyone will stay now. There's no chance that anyone's going to be repatriated. Once you're in Europe, you get to stay. And most of them, from what I can see, they're all young men from sub-Saharan Africa. Yeah. That's the normal route, that's the normal flow. It's the same in the Italian islands, by the way. Everyone talks about Syrian refugees. There's almost no Syrian refugees coming in now. These are almost all to the Italian islands this year as well, young men from sub-Saharan Africa.
And so they're all economic migrants. None of them are refugees.
Well, some of them will have claims of asylum. In fact, all of them will claim asylum. Some of them may even have some legitimate claims. But the point is that almost the vast majority are going to be economic migrants. They're undoubtedly fleeing horrible economic situations. But the problem that we have in Europe is, can Europe really answer and be the home for everybody in the world who has economic problems?
Also, interestingly, in your article today, you talk about potential or definite collusion between the smugglers' networks and some of the NGOs operating in the Mediterranean. Can you expand on that for us? You actually think these charities are aiding and abetting, do you?
There's no doubt about that. It's been a suspicion for a long time. They've been cooperating. And there's a very, very fine line they've been treading between, this is NGO vessels in the Mediterranean, particularly around the shores of Libya, between Libya and Italy, where they, along with European vessels, it has to be stressed, the official vessels, pick up the boatfuls of people and they bring them safely onto their vessels and then bring them into Europe. That's the normal pattern. It's been the normal pattern for some years now. It's what I describe at length in my book, The Strange Death of Europe. But the NGOs, recently there's been a startling story in the Italian press I linked to, where the Italian authorities had somebody undercover, and it showed that actually, on occasion, some of the NGOs were not only picking the migrants off the boats, but actually returning the boats to the smugglers. And they're actually acting as part of the gang.
What should we be doing with these people as we pick them up in the Mediterranean or on the beaches of Spain or Greece or indeed Italy? Should we now be doing what the Australians did, taking them somewhere or taking them back to where they come from? Do we need to now start sending a tougher message?
My view from the beginning, and I say this in my book, is that there are things we'll end up having to do anyway, which we should have done from the start. And so why not think about them late as it is in the day now? And one of them is, yes, nobody should be able to come into Europe and have their asylum claims processed in Europe. The whole process should happen outside of our continent. People, if they have a legitimate claim, and I believe that very small numbers of people could have a claim, and they should be looked at. But that should all happen outside Europe, because the problem is that once you're in Europe, you get to stay. And even if you're found not to have a claim, and most people, even by the EU's own admission, most people who've come in recent years have no legitimate right to remain in Europe. Why do they remain? They remain because they're here. Because it is very difficult, as the British government has basically confessed under Labour and Conservative for many years, it's basically very hard to return people once they're in. So I say don't let them in. I say don't let them in. Turn the boats around.
Now, you make a link also between what's happened in Newcastle and the Newcastle gang rape story. What is that link, do you think?
Oh, I make the mention of the fact that, after every terrorist attack now, there's always somebody, usually from the left-wing media, who writes a piece saying how wonderful it is that the victims are of such a diverse set of backgrounds. George Eaton from the New Statesman after the London Bridge attack said, look, we should be so proud of the diversity of the victims. Some people point out, perhaps unkindly, that the perpetrators all seem to have one identity in common, but it will gloss over that for a moment. In fact, by the way, Cressida Dick from the Metropolitan Police made the same comment after the latest terrorist attack in London, that we should be proud of this diversity. And I mentioned rather, tongue-in-cheek, I suppose, that if you look at the identities of the men involved in the latest rape gang, they're actually from a very diverse range of backgrounds. They're not, as normally is the case, mainly only from Pakistan and Bangladesh, but also from Iraq, from India, from Turkey, and this is a great demonstration of integration and indeed multiculturalism at work.
Sarcasm, the lowest form of wit, but right on the button today. Douglas, thank you very much indeed for joining us.